laborers into his harvest. Go on your way. I am sending you out like lambs into the midst of wolves.
You today. Thank you for the invitation from the team and from the congregation. As you probably heard, my name is Brittany, but most people do call me Rev Smash. Um, so we can have that story a little bit later, or maybe my Luke 10 team can tell you where that name came from. But I'm clergy in the United Church of Christ, and I am an organizer, educator, and minister. And I've been coaching your Luke 10 team since the fall and have really enjoyed getting to know your community a bit more. Luke 10 is a program to equip churches to understand white Christian nationalism and enact justice through processes of community organizing. This is a program run by SURGE, which stands for Showing Up for Racial Justice, and the Kairos Center for Religions, Rights, and Social Justice, two organizations doing some really cool work across the country. And y'all have a wonderful group of folks here who have really committed to learning more about white Christian nationalism and how to resist it while building deep and meaningful relationships in your community. And today I want to provide you with just a little glimpse of the Luke 10 program and how we are particularly oriented toward equipping churches to do justice in the midst of powerful and pervasive white Christian nationalism. I'm going to preach a little, I'm going to explain a little, and then we'll have some time at the end for questions and answers with your Luke 10 team. They can share more about what they've been up to. So, to start, what is white Christian nationalism? May have heard it a lot, thrown around a lot, but we describe white Christian nationalism as authoritarian, reactionary Christianity. It is an ideology of authoritarianism and wealth mongering that creates policies and systems that keep poor people poor and limit their access to resources and support. And then, and this is the important part, and then white Christian nationalists utilize scapegoating to blame these poverty conditions on others, like immigrants, queer folks, and BIPOC folks. White Christian nationalism perpetuates poverty, and then those in power who promote white Christian nationalism use fear tactics. I'm sure you've seen this. Use fear tactics to make sure that communities fight with one another instead of building and leveraging relationships and power to oust those who benefit from some of our dirty, rotten systems. White Christian nationalism is not simply just a belief system. It is an all-encompassing structure that promotes violence and deep harm and seeks to confuse people concerning where that harm comes from. It is powerful, it is sinful, and it can, I think, really cause us to despair because it's a constantly shifting sleight of hand by those who benefit from keeping us confused and disconnected. It's on purpose, right? It's on purpose. And these white Christian nationalist power mongers, they are using and abusing our faith tradition to pull people into their networks of illusion and wickedness. White Christian nationalists utilize Christian rhetoric, Christian practice for the purpose of harmful power. And I think it's important to note that white Christian nationalism gives some folks, particularly, I think, poor white conservative folks, false hope through an ugly and pernicious promise of purpose, of meaning and mattering. And it's enraging. I think it's so discouraging because it's hard to see a way to change this pervasive and sometimes stealthy plan to destroy us, to destroy most of us. But what we know, friends, and what I trust is that when we organize, when we build power, we can literally alter the very shape of our communities so that we can resist this evil with our noncompliance. We can build alternative systems and structures and processes. Mennonites are great at this. We can build alternative systems and structures and processes that benefit our neighbors and our neighborhoods instead of benefiting wealth and power mongers. I want to take a minute to talk about power because this has come up a lot in the program. In progressive churches especially, we don't really like to talk about power. Sometimes we might talk about evil power, the evil power of authoritarianism. But in general, I think power kind of scares us, right? We think about the powerlessness of Jesus in certain ways. And we're scared of power because we see its abuses and we are uncomfortable saying that we want power, that we maybe need power. But friends, power simply is the ability to act. Power is the ability to act, the ability to make choices that deeply impact our lives, changing our communities, transforming our society in the way of hope, in the way of love, in the way of faith. That requires significant power, significant ability to act, make choices. And the good news is there can be so much power in beloved communities that are focused on justice and peace. And I think there can be a lot of power in beloved community when we realize, and this is important, when we realize that we can't simply give power to those who are hurting. Power does not operate through charity. I've actually come to really dislike the phrase empowering others. I won't go too deeply into that. But we must build power through mutuality and solidarity. We can't give it away. We must come alongside those who are most directly impacted by violent white Christian nationalism. We must follow their lead, support their movements, and build relationships of trust and deep care. And this is what the Luke 10 program is really trying to be about. But it's long and deep work, longer and deeper than the 9 months of the program. It's long and deep work that requires us to consistently lean into new ways of thinking about justice and discerning what our faith requires of us. We do this over and over again. It's a process. This is faithful praxis, acting, reflecting, prayerfully discerning, and then doing it again. We're constantly learning, constantly being challenged, constantly in discomfort, constantly seeking out that joy of being together. In the Gospel of Luke, chapter 10, we are told that the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. I think the laborers are few not because there is a lack of desire to do good, to do justice. It's not because we don't care. The laborers are few because we, all of us, have been formed in ways of charity and justice that honestly just don't work toward the types of transformation that we deeply yearn for. We often like to talk a lot in our progressive Christian churches about unity and inclusivity and equality. And those are very, very good things. But I believe that as goals in and of themselves, a focus there can often lead us to an uncritical insistence on harmony and a civil acquiescence to the harmful forces that are quite literally killing our neighbors. So instead of unity, inclusivity, and equality, I often like to talk about, I desire solidarity, accountability, and deep, deep mutuality. And these things may sound similar, but they include different goals, different orientations, and different ways of being in relationship with those in our communities who are most impacted by systems and structures of evil, like white Christian nationalism. The harvest is plentiful. There is so much possibility here and now. Amidst the chaos and the struggle and the violence and the fear, there is so much possibility for radical mutuality and faithful noncompliance. But again, it's incredibly difficult work. Jesus sends 72 of his followers to labor, to work in the midst of wolves. Later in the chapter, he talks about treading on the power of the enemy. And this is a little uncomfortable for us, right? We don't like to talk about enemies. We often pretend like we don't have them. But we do, friends, have enemies. They have erected systems of evil that destroy our neighborhoods and kill our friends. And I find hope. I take heart in the fact that Jesus names his enemies. He confronts them, and he overcomes their violent power by building alternative power through mutuality, accountability, and solidarity. I think that God's incarnation in Jesus, to me, is the most incredible example we have of solidarity. I love talking about this, that God took on humanness, complete humanness, to demonstrate utter embodied solidarity with us. I think that is extraordinarily powerful. In Luke chapter 10, Jesus turns to his disciples and he says, "Blessed are the eyes that see what you see. For I tell you that many prophets and kings desired to see what you see, but did not see it, and hear what you hear, but did not hear it." Jesus called his disciples and calls us to a different type of labor, a new way to see and hear, labor that can harvest transformation through power building relationships. And this is what the Luke 10 program is about, at least trying to be about. We're figuring it out as we go. This is really the first year of the program. But this is what the program is about, equipping churches to harvest transformation through power building relationships. And now I want to give you a little bit of an idea of what your Luke 10 friends have been up to, because they have been working hard. They've been putting in some work. I'm going to share my screen and show you just one slide so you can kind of follow along. All right, here we go. There, that is, there I am. This is my favorite little thing that can be on the screen. So I pretend like I'm a newscaster or something, but this is a slide of the discernment process of Luke 10 of the program. And this is what we showed teams at the very beginning. The red "you are here" symbol, that's not where they are now. They're way past that, so advanced. But that is where they started. Your Luke 10 team started with something we call community mapping, discovering the condition of your local community. They researched pain points to learn more about the ways that people are suffering locally. They sought to learn about who's acting in the community, who has power, who is being harmed, and who benefits from that harm. So they put together lots of information and did a great presentation on that. And after community mapping, they started an internal listening project, doing what we call one-to-one or one-on-one conversations within your congregation. Some of you may have participated in these. And it's important here to note that one-to-ones are not interviews. They aren't just about friendship or just about gathering information, but they are conversations rooted in deep listening and developing relationships that particularly aid in building power and enacting change. They are purposeful conversations for purposeful relationships. And one-to-ones are a key foundation of community organizing and what your friends have been up to. And in December, your Loop 10 team, they summarized and analyzed their community mapping and their internal listening into what we call the Milestone 1 document. So they get all of this information they've been collecting. They had lots of conversations together to try to analyze and discern through that what's going on, what they're hearing, what they're seeing. And most recently, they started an external listening project, doing one-to-ones with people in your local community who might be good partners to engage for doing justice, making peace, resisting white Christian nationalism, and the racism and poverty that accompany it. So they're out and about chatting with folks all throughout the community in these one-to-one conversations. And soon, once they get finished with that, they will be gathering, analyzing the data that they've collected through all of these different community organizing assignments and processes. And in that, discerning what direction might be best for your congregation when considering how to harvest transformation and peace through power building relationships. This organizing project or experiment is kind of the pinnacle of this program. It can move in many different directions. It still can move in many different directions. And that is the point of this discernment, this process, to discover what direction they and you all might lean towards in terms of organizing. And I'm just completely delighted by the commitment, the effort, and the desire that your Loop 10 team has shown. They've really just been thrown into some new things, some new ideas, some new ways to go about doing justice. And they're just doing incredible work. They're very thoughtful, and they deeply, deeply care. I love how the Loop 10 team, I'm just gonna affirm you all a little more. I love how you're actively learning and employing organizing skills alongside what I see is a deepening theological commitment to new possibilities for justice making. This team is representing y'all really well, and they have demonstrated, at least to me, how deeply your entire congregation cares about doing justice, making peace, and really leaning in to transforming in the world in the way that your faith desires and requires of you. So I'm excited to see what may come for Hyde Park Mennonite Fellowship in the way of solidarity. I pray for the good harvest to come. I pray that may it be so. And I think now we can pivot to have some questions from y'all that perhaps your Loop 10 team can answer. And if not, if they're like, I don't want to answer that, they can throw it to Snash. We'll see what we can figure out. So Loop 10 team, let's have some questions and answers.
Okay. So if there's a question, I'll hand the microphone around so the people on Zoom can hear and everybody can hear. If you had a question on Loop 10, we are in the external interviews. It's quite interesting. We've had some good ones, and we're continuing to work on those listening sessions. Question?
Where are you finding people for the external interviews?
We're doing organizations that we're aware of. Also other faith groups we're interviewing. People that we know have connections within the community that are addressing the pain points that we've heard about. One of the new organizations that's coming is the Interfaith Justice Idaho group, which is going to be launched, I believe, in May. So that's one of the ones we're very interested in. They've been interviewed. So I'm hoping to interview MAP, which is the Multi-Faith Action Project here in Boise, and they're doing a lot of charity work. I'm also trying to speak to the Catholics of Idaho for their social justice group, see what they're up to. It's learning. It's really kind of fun to research who's doing what. Questions? Sure.
You know, I know a number of people from the church are in this. Are there other people in the community that are in your group right now?
We're the only Luke 10 group in Idaho. We're partnering with 11 churches altogether in this round of Luke 10, and we're the farthest west. Most of them are back east. I guess not a lot of questions. We're happy to talk about it. So that's Jim Gurneau, David Matthews, Valerie, myself. Who am I forgetting?
Gary was part.
Yeah, Gary has been part, and he did it. And so Gary was very engaged too.
And Julie.
Julie Allen. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Jim's here and you're here. Is there something else that you would like to tell us about your process? Is there anything else you'd like to say?
Well, I don't think there's anything new. I guess what we're all struggling with, there's a lot of things going on in the community, and there are a lot of people in this congregation doing things in the community to try to confront what's going on in our state. What we're trying to discern, is there a particular way, either piggybacking onto something that's already going and we can jump in and really be supportive of that, or do we come up with something brand new that nobody is yet doing? So we're in that kind of discernment process as we're doing the interviews. I've done 2 external interviews. I've got a couple more scheduled. So we'll see what comes out of all of that. But the whole idea is that this doesn't become then a project of just 5 people, but the whole congregation comes on board. And one example, I think Vivian mentioned, this new group that's coming into being. It's a combination of some groups that are already there, Interfaith Justice-Idaho. They're going to have a kickoff in May, and I think the future is that worshiping communities can join it as a community as well as individuals. And I think that group will then be looking at a variety of ways of responding to white Christian nationalism in the community. So, it's just really preliminary, but at the very least, we might want to be a part of that group by putting it in our budget, of supporting it financially, as well as people coming on board to help lead it.
And that new group that is forming is connected to the national group, the Interfaith Alliance, which is all over the country. Any other questions?
So traditionally, Mennonites have been considered peacemakers, and I grew up in progressive Mennonite churches. And not all Mennonites are progressive. Some have fallen victim to the scourge of white Christian nationalism. Have you found that in most or all faith traditions that there is more of a progressive wing and one that's less so? Or have you found that in some churches in the area that you're reaching out to, that you're finding that this is kind of a new thing for them?
I think, Jim, you interviewed a church this week. Did you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I interviewed the pastor at Red Rock Christian Church, which is a Disciples of Christ church. I didn't really know what was going on there. I had heard some good things about it, but the interview was very energizing for me because she's new in the community. She grew up here, born here, left and went away to seminary and served in a variety of places, and has come back 3 years ago now to serve at this Disciples of Christ congregation, and I was amazed how connected she is with 5 other churches on the bench, and doing some really good stuff, but also connected to what she's described as the downtown pastors that are leading some of the protests that's taking place on Wednesdays. And she's herself very energized, and she sees, she says she senses that there's a new wave of leadership in faith communities in the Boise area in the last 5 years. We've got another new person coming on board now, and there's a new spirit and a new drive to kind of to really do some things. At the same time, recognizing that obviously there's a lot of congregations that won't be on board. But I think one of the challenges of Interfaith Justice Idaho will be to invite every congregation to come on board and join them, and we'll see what happens. So, so I think there's probably a mixed bag in the community as a whole, but the people I've been interviewing at least, they're on board, and they're doing a lot of different stuff, and we're trying to get a handle on all of that.
Any other questions? I think we'll call that good, and you can always talk to us after church. Thanks. Thank you, Smash. Oh, you haven't told why you have the nickname Smash. I think you should share.
Okay, if you insist. One of my favorite icebreaker games, I used to do this with teenagers, but it's great for adults too, so I think you all should do this afterwards, is say, if you were a DJ, what would your DJ name be? So I need all of you to think about your DJ names. But my response would always be DJ Smash Patty, because I'm smashing the patriarchy. So people just started calling me Smash after that, and it's been probably close to 10 years now that everyone just calls me Smash. So it's stuck.
Okay, let's turn in